Welcome to the Meaningful Work Podcast Fireside Chat, a more relaxed, deep conversation with this week's guest. So grab a coffee, a cigar, or whatever gives you the feels, and get ready to laugh and learn. Here's your host, Josh Schneider.
Welcome to the Fireside Chat. Steve, thank you. Okay, I have been jonesing. You know when you hear those things sometimes and you can go back and remember where you were? I can literally see myself while you're sharing this thinking, this theory, this idea, strategy around a mutual uncommon ground. So I want you to talk about that, and then I want you to talk about whatever the craziest thing you're thinking about right now. So mutual uncommon ground, what is it, and how, as a parent or even as a peer, how do we need to implement this in our life?
Hey, Josh. So this mutual uncommon ground is something that I've been fortunate enough to speak to business leaders, certainly parents, even peers about. And it happened. I was actually in the Netherlands, and I was speaking to a group of people in the Netherlands. And after the whole keynote presentation, I was sitting with a core group of people having a further conversation. Well, the one gentleman whose name is Yaku says to me, "That concept, explain it to me again." And speaking through an interpreter was interesting, but he says, so I'm trying to explain the concept to him, and he says to me, "You mean mutual uncommon ground?" And I'm like, yes, I'm going to use that. And so the premise of mutual uncommon ground and why it is so valuable is what we see with Gen Z. We even seeing it with Alpha generation, which are the younger than them, of course, is that if you try and build relationship with Gen Z in a space where they are already experts, most parents will understand what the rolling of the eyes and the is all about. Can you help me set up Snapchat? You say to your daughter and or son, and they're like, roll their eyes and leave the room, right? Likewise, when you as a mother or a father you're doing something and your child asks you to explain, the patience is just not there. And so what ends up happening in our busy lives is that we don't have the time, effort, or energy to navigate a learner, a beginner, through an area where we are experts. Very few people have the patience to go through that journey well with somebody who's a novice, a newbie. So the mutual uncommon ground is incredibly successful to start to do two things. One, to build relationship, but two, to get you into someone's curated stream. And so what it really means is, instead of saying, I'm an expert, the sage on stage, listen to me and I will tell you how to do it, it gets you to a place where you and I discover something together. And the amazing relationship that gets formed or is formed through that process is life-changing. It's also a shift of how you approach and think and understand relationships. Because now you don't come in as I'm the one who knows and you're the one who's now learning. It is, let's go on this journey, this adventure together. And it can be something as simple as recording a YouTube clip. It can be something as simple as painting. It can be skydiving. It can be horse riding. It can be mud wrestling. It doesn't matter. The premise of discovering something with someone else for the first time and or learning something together has an incredible way of bonding people. And it starts the conversation of, how do I get into someone's curated stream?
So not only is that so practical at home, in relationships, but even as you said, learning something new together, I feel like that is like a human, it's like a human driver. It's like it's something that just inspires. Like, there's something about doing something with somebody for the first time. I knew that one quote, when's the last time you did something for the first time? What do you think it is? Is it the companionship? Is it the novelty? Is it all of these different things getting accessed at the same time? Like, what do you think is kind of, obviously it's different per person in some situations, but what's driving that deep connection that's created in that?
There are a few things at play here. I believe the first is the fact where you and somebody are trying to navigate something that neither of you have navigated. And so it breaks down a lot of walls and or pretenses and or preconceived ideas immediately, because you're both novices trying to figure out how to make this journey work. The second component of that, which you just alluded to, is very, very good, is the fact that when we as humans go through the process of learning something new, there is something dynamically exciting and empowering about that. So not only have you now discovered something together, but you've come out of it greater for the experience. And it's somewhat humbling, if you decide to go skydiving together. Somebody might be really good at it. I don't mean skydiving at the process of skydiving, or you might be bad at it.
Everyone's successful.
Right? Well, or they have to throw you out of the airplane. And that process is just amazing. Now, when you put it in the context of a leader and or a parent, it takes you off this hierarchy, off this throne, to come down to a level where both of you are somewhat in the same boat, in the same place. And so that journey is just so, so, so powerful. And as I said, the breaking down of walls is what this is about, because without getting into the depths of it, we all have, in fact, there's a number of articles out now that talk about Gen Z having an 8-second attention span. And they celebrate the fact that millennials had a 12-second attention span, and they are sad about the fact that, Gen Z only has an 8-second attention span. And the goldfish is on the scale of apparently a 3-second attention span. So we're heading towards the goldfish era or area.
The goldfish standard.
Yep, the goldfish standard, right? But, you've heard me say this before. I don't agree with that at all. It is, in fact, an 8-second filter. So now you take this into context. I have 8 seconds before someone filters me in and or out. And the reason for that is there's so much content being consumed on a day-to-day basis. You cannot actually consume it all. So we are developing. Gen Z has already developed. The rest of us are well on our way on the way of filtering things out really, really quickly. Not reading this email, not listening to this, not watching this, not listening to this conversation, because you only have so much bandwidth. So the filter helps you very quickly determine, not always correctly, but determine what you're going to pay attention to, which then creates what I've spoken about as the curated stream. Now, the curated stream, what's complex about that is if you as a parent are in your child's curated stream, you can influence them. If you're not in their curated stream, you have no power to influence. That's the freaky thing. That's why businesses have to understand how to get into the curated stream to influence their customers, because if you're not in their curated stream, you don't even exist in their life. So now you put those two things into the context of mutual and common ground, and all of a sudden you are in someone's curated stream. You have the ability to speak into their lives and influence them because of this journey that you've gone on together. It is a shortcut to get into someone's curated stream, and you will forever be. I'll give you a great example. A friend, an owner of a company, asks me to consult to his business. He's got an engineering business. We do that. After the conversation over coffee, he asks me about his kids. Hey, I just feel like I haven't. Yes, one thing leads to another, and we start to unpack what his son does. Mutual uncommon ground. His son has his friends around to their house quite often, and they go down into the basement and they have these Nerf gun wars. Wonderful, right? And I ask my friend, what do you do during this time? He's, we're close the door so we don't hear all the screaming. And, when they're done, they come up. I said, here's how you find mutual uncommon ground. Now, it's not exactly the definition I've given you, but I'm giving you this as an example. He goes downstairs. He crawls around on the floor, my friend, with his iPhone, and he spends 2 hours videoing this Nerf gun war. All of them come upstairs. They and they take this video, and here's where the uncommon ground is. They figure out how to edit the video, upload it to YouTube. All of a sudden, my friend is in every single one of their curated streams. He is a hero in their lives, and now he has the ability to influence them, to speak into their lives. He started a journey and he found where the mutual uncommon ground was, but he took some deliberate steps to figure out how to get into their lives. Most parents push back and say, I'm the parent, I have influence. I love you as a parent, fantastic. The younger your child is, the more influence you have, certainly. Please know you'll be able to tell them to go to bed and clean their room. Good luck if you think they're going to do that. They probably will. But please understand that the average Gen Z has at least 10 influences that they follow. And at any time, if you are not sexy enough, engaging enough, fun enough to compete with those influences, you have zero opportunity to influence even your own children. So parents have to get it, that they have to figure out how to find mutual uncommon ground. They have to figure out how to get into the kids' curated stream. They have to, in essence, create these Instagram moments, because that's what they're competing against.
Do you think failure to do so, now there's failure to get into the stream, but is failing in the process of trying to get in the stream, how does a parent walk through that? Like, you know, you tried something and she rolls her eyes. You tried something and he's like, Dad, no. How do you keep trying, or is talk about that a little bit?
Okay, so please understand, this is a monstrous battle. You are competing with the stickiest, most compelling content there has ever been. You are competing with people who make millions of dollars entertaining you 24/7. Okay, so don't think this is a walk in the park. And if it doesn't work the first time, oh well. Think about the ramifications and the implications of that mindset. You've got to become the most compelling content in your own child's life.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 nights ago, my daughter says, Dad, come here. Standing in the kitchen, and she's got her phone and she's videoing me, and I'm like, what is this going to be now? Right, here I am. She mentions 3 or 4 dances by name, and she tells me, do this dance. Now, the big joke is I don't know what those dances are, and she's looking at how I interpret that dance. She videos me, posts it to her friends, big laugh. The point is that you have to, in many ways, just become something maybe that is not comfortable for you, but I will do that because it is important for me to be in my daughter and in my son's life. It's important not so that I can manipulate them, but so that I can lead,
have influence,
so that I can influence.
Yeah.
And it's not total influence. I just want to be a part of the conversation so that when that moment comes where one of them has a decision to make, I am one of the people curated in that they would come to and say, hey, what do you think? So it is an uphill battle. You are going to fail over and over again. But that's no different with teenagers. Think about it. Parents, all they do is fail with teenagers. Yeah. But it's a change of a mindset where now you have an outcome in mind as opposed to trying to manipulate their behavior. Yeah. You realize now there is a goal in mind, and it is a long play. I have to stay in this conversation because there is a line of people waiting to get into this conversation with my child. And there isn't a gap that I am going to budge into. If I'm not in the line, guess what? I do not exist. And that's harsh reality. Parents have to stay in a way involved so that they are relevant, because the relevance of older generations is waning really quickly with the advancement of the world we live in.
You know, I see the world in pictures, and as you were talking, maybe you don't, which you're maybe better off for it, but there's that Miley Cyrus song, I came in like a wrecking ball. And I saw when a parent, and my oldest is 5, even there's times I'm trying to connect with her, and it's like you just feel like you're coming in out of left field. And it's the worst. I mean, it's so simple to connect with them. They think I'm the most amazing thing. You want to avoid those those large swings where there's a time that your child has to be influenced. Your teenager has to be influenced by you, meaning direction or insight or discipline. And what I'm hearing you saying is that to have that in the most compelling way, the thinking should be, how do I get into that stream? How do I become? And one of the ways to do that is not to try and learn all the things that they're doing, but to be willing to play along and to potentially take on a new venture, a new journey, a new something together where you're co-creating or you're co-learning or you're journeying together. Man, it's like so powerful every time.
Think about the shift we're asking parents to go through. We're asking parents to shift from the no mentality, get off social media, get off your phone, this is bad, this is bad, to the realization that that is never going to happen. If you are the parent who takes that away from your child, you have just caused the worst possible situation where they are the outcast in their peer space, and we know how powerful their peer space is at school.
Yeah.
That is brutal. What you've got to understand is, I have to be in this race long enough so that decisions they are making in that space are made well. I've got to influence them in a way that I'm future-proofing them. I am not living their life for them. I have to future-proof them. And that journey in itself is so important. I think the whole point here is that the world has changed. You have given birth to an alien. You have to constantly work at figuring out how to make this alien's journey on Earth work well. Understanding that the alien knows a lot, thinks they know everything, but doesn't.
Yeah.
Right? Just like when I was 21, I really knew everything.
For sure.
When I was 30, I realized I didn't know everything, but now I do. And that journey continues. They certainly have access to all information and feel like they know everything. And so even for you to qualify to speak into their life and not be this old folk in their life is very difficult. You've got a lot to overcome.
Yeah.
But I think the point is just that for too long, parents have been in a position of this epidemic of undermanagement. And so there is a massive shift that has to take place. And that is hard when you're working so hard. You've got so much going on in your life to understand the importance of it. Because the truth is, if you don't, they will turn out okay in spite of your absence. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. They're going to manage just like teenagers before them turned out okay in spite of their parents. The point is not that. I'm not in business and I'm not on this journey to have them just figure it out. I'm on this journey because I truly want to be a part of them being the best version of themselves that they could ever be. And I understand that if we are not deliberately involved, visibly involved, they will never be that. Now, I'm not going to be the only reason they're going to get there, but I'm certainly going to be a part of that journey.
Wow. It's, I'm just like racing ahead for so many years ahead. And actually, when we went on vacation a little bit earlier this year, and one of the things I said to Brooklyn, the oldest, is I said, hey, when we get down there, we got to watch some YouTube videos together, and we have to learn how to do that dance. The dance. I think it's, I don't know, the floss. I think it's called the floss. I'm not even that old, Steve, and I don't even know what it's called. And it was so much fun, like laughing together. Like, she's like, Dad, you're not doing it right. Like, I'm like, Brooklyn, you're like, you got to do it this way. Or just, it was such a co-laboring experience, which is, especially for certain individuals, for me in particular, I have to be so cautious to avoid having the always on parent, or like, hey, there's a better way, because I think about the world and there always being a better way, always finding a better path, a better route. That's don't want to groom an environment where my kids think that if they're not doing it the very best way, that it's not worth doing. So good. I wrote some notes from something you said earlier. It sparked something for me. I wrote, have they developed their brain to, I'm paraphrasing now, but have they developed their brain, this generation, to be so much more comfortable in the midst of frenetic chaos, because they grew up where they have so many apps. They have 5 different platforms for messaging. They're managing what people think. They're managing what people on social media are saying. They're managing like what their photo looks like, how many likes they got. And I'm not saying it from a negative way, but in terms of a training ground, of a schooling, of being able to process so much different information, is this something that maybe becomes an advantage and as we step into the future of work? Or how does this, I mean, it has to have some impact, because you go 40 years ago where TV was 3 channels and a phone had a cord, versus a kid now has access and has to manage and process and think and shut off. Like, it's just, what kind of positive impacts is this going to have in the long run, you think?
Let me say this before I transition to answer that question. The last thing I want to share with you, and it's still applicable, about this mutual uncommon ground. I shared this with you. There's a gentleman who's just an amazing man. His name is Kirby. He said your brain cannot be in a state of knowing and in a state of curiosity at the same time. And we've got to get people into the state of curiosity in order to build relationship or learn. And so what that means for this ability that this generation 100% has developed and grown is the ability to update, switch, pivot at a moment's notice. They're on average 5 screens at the same time, which is crazy. Look, there's always 2 sides to a coin, right? And so the one side of this coin is really positive. They have the ability to switch between platforms. They are not fazed by things changing in the workspace or online. They're really amazingly quick to adapt and to pick up new skills and to transition. Spectacular, really good for business, really good for efficiency. There's so much to that. The other side of that coin, now think about this, is what you just described to me as a journey for this generation, is a journey of always becoming and never arriving. So think about this. There is always an update. If I grab my phone, which I'm doing as we speak, and I look now, I do my updates all the time. I have 18 updates that my phone is ready to install. I can do that every day. And I have apps, and then there's a new app that I'm going to try, and there's this new approach I'm going to try. What it has done, and I'm not a psychologist, but what I'm seeing is this. There was a gentleman from Brazil who's 18 visiting with me, and he was talking to me about just anxiety and the stress of life. And what I unpacked with him was this. Do you realize that your entire life you've always been becoming? There's always been a new, updated, downloadable version of every single thing that you put your hand to. And as a result, what ends up happening is you always have this feeling of never getting where you want to go, and the goalpost shifting all the time. It's got that kind of like empty feeling in your inner being. Whereas generations before, we would get somewhere. Think about the 3 channels. It's not hard. If you've got 300 channels, well, what am I missing? Flicking between ads, never going back. And so we've got a generation that on the one hand is just so good at pivoting and moving and changing, but on the other hand, there's this generation that is always wondering, well, where is the end point? And you look at some of the depression, the anxiety, and you can now start to see why there's this constant nagging for your attention and feeling of if I'm not giving it there, I am really losing out, missing out, and I'm not fulfilling what my desire for life is. Ariana Huffington spoke a number of years ago at a conference I was at. Obviously, she's Huffington Post, and a simple story. She spoke about her to-do list that she does every year, and one of the things that she had on her to-do list was to learn to speak Spanish. And year after year after year, it stayed on the list because she just didn't get to it. And it created within her this anxiety, this feeling of, I didn't accomplish everything I was supposed to and everything that comes with this. Well, she takes it off her list, and all of a sudden there's this moment. You've got to understand that we, as well as Gen Z, even more than us, are always striving. And there's very rarely this moment of peace and I've arrived. And that brings a lot of tension with it. Now, the other side of the coin, as I've already said, in the workplace, the ability to pivot and do all those things at a moment's notice, switch between applications, take on a new application, work within, they do that phenomenally.
That feeling of like, where is the end point, or what am I guess that's where the joke FOMO came out from.
Right.
But it's in terms of like peak performance, in terms of performing, in terms of achieving that wasted energy, those open browsers in your mind, the constant pull of, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing enough of the things? Am I reading the right books? Am I like, it will run you down from the inside. And so you're saying that this is just kind of it's like a built-in form of nature that these individuals have. It's crazy. I mean, that's one of the things I struggle with the most, and it drives you, and it's powerful, but it can be so dangerous.
And Josh, what we're seeing, honestly, is we're seeing the journey of identity under the microscope. We're seeing that Gen Z, and truthfully, just about every generation, performing and putting on an identity depending on who, where, when, and how, why, and how. All the reasons. When I'm on Facebook, this is who I am. When I'm here, this is who I am. And what I'm seeing is that Gen Z are starting to figure out their identity, and they're starting to say, this is who I am, and I'm happy with that. And when you get to that nirvana, that moment of truly understanding your identity, then a lot of this tends to fall away. And I think that's the journey that parents and leaders are on, is helping the younger generations establish an identity that they value, that they're proud of, and that they want. And once they're in that place, some of these external pressures, because there is an immense amount, just do not have the same pull. And I'm starting to see that. That's part of why I think Gen Z is so cause-driven, because they're drawing a line in the sand. That's why they are so siloed, because they're drawing a line in the sand and saying, I don't really care what you think or don't like. This is where I'm setting up my shop. This is who I am. And so you're starting to see more of that, where identity is being formed. And as I really believe, and again, I'm not a psychologist, I really believe that identity is being formed because this roaming around as a nomad, emotionally, intellectually, is just wearing people thin. And so they get to a place where they're like, this is who I am, this is who I'm going to be. I've designed myself now, which is really, that opens a whole lot of other debates, to be this, and that's who I am.
I have to imagine that identity, in many ways, as you just said, is also put together by this curated stream. Like, I'm taking these 10 sources of influence, and I'm pushing and pulling from each, what I like, what I don't like, who am I, who do others say I am. And so maybe as a parent, it's one more plea, one more rationality of how critically important it is that you are a part of this stream, or that you don't quit, you don't stop until you have a place in that stream. Because I mean, am I making the wrong leap that identity is in some ways formed by this?
Oh, completely. Think about growing up. There's got to have been that kid that your mom and dad said, look, I don't want you hanging out with. And you may have been that kid, I don't know. But 100%, look, the people, the influences that you allow into your life are going to form you. And that's why, it's one of the reasons why parents, honestly, leaders have to take this journey seriously. It's not because they are broken without you in it, but you bring some sort of additional balance to this whole journey. I lecture a lot on interview skills, on resume building to high school students, and even in the social media space. And they talk to me about social media being private. And I explain to them, please understand, your social media shouldn't be private. And the reason it shouldn't be private, because look, there's a whole lot of conversation around private, not private. But my point in this conversation is that social media is a part of your resume. It's no longer a toy, it is a part of your resume. And in so doing, if you agree with that and you decide to open up your social media, please make sure that you have a balance of not only what you post, but who you're connected with. Because if all I see you being connected with is peers, I, as an employer, realize that you haven't made the stretch yet or bridged the gap yet to figure out how to connect with other generations. And so there's this whole journey. It's so difficult to unpack the entire conversation well, because it is just so big, and it's almost like every component influences something else. And my point was that it is critical for us as older generations to figure out how to be part of the younger generation's lives. They don't fully get it yet. They may never get it, but we have something of immense value to pass on to them. Legacy, immense value. And if for no other reason, so that we can share this legacy with them and they would have an aha moment realizing that they didn't know or didn't realize, that on its own is enough of a reason to really work hard to to get into the curated stream and to become an influence in their lives.
Steve, come on. So good. Well, thank you for taking the time to hang out today, to be on the interview, and to do this fireside chat. Man, this is going to change some people's lives. And, we didn't even you kept saying future proofing. We didn't even get to talk there. So we'll have to have you back and continue to dive into some of the insights and the knowledge and just even, how do you perform? How do you overcome obstacles? A tennis pro, and we didn't even get to ask performance questions. Steve, again, thank you so much. Such a pleasure to have you on the show. We'll look forward to talking to you next time.